Hey guys, Furum here, and today I'm going to be testing the Mercedes-Benz SLR McLaren at Golden Max in multiplayer in Asphalt 9 in the Fight Fire with Fire season, I think it was. Finally, we have the third video in a series of 3, which I promised to do in that season, with the first one being the Tech Rules, and the second one being the Inferno, and I also 5-starred my own SLR recently as well. So this car, it's a bit underrated in my opinion. Even in this season, it did quite well against the Tech Rules and the Aventadors. Obviously not as good, but better than you might expect. I'm sure most people, when they think of the SLR, don't think, oh, this is a great multiplayer car. It's faster than the Huracan by like 6 miles per hour, and it drives pretty great. And so I really think that it's better than most people probably give it credit for. It's also available to drive in the current multiplayer season, the Fire and Lightning series, which pretty much has the exact same cars available in it as the Fight Fire with Fire season. However, you can only drive the cars at the star counts that you have them at. So basically, instead of getting max retries and everything, you're just driving your own versions of them if you have them. So I will probably be driving my newly maxed Huayra BC in that season. A lot of you guys noticed in my April Fool's video, which apparently got quite a few of you, that I had maxed that car through just showing my Legends shop. You guys are pretty observant. And yes, it is just as good as it used to be. Unfortunately, we cannot drive it in the A-Class Elite events anymore, but it's still just as good as ever for multiplayer. That's the thing. I feel like a lot of these cars, such as the Huracan and the Huayra, which have always been great cars for multiplayer, will continue to be, even with a bunch of newer cars coming out. And I've talked about this before, but one of the biggest reasons for that is just because a lot of the newer cars are just hard to get to high star counts. And so that's why that even though they may be definitely better at max than the Huayra, most people aren't going to be able to get them at max because of the 20,000 tokens or really hard events or whatever it takes in order to get them there. So we'll probably be seeing these older cars in multiplayer for quite a long time, until the newer cars become more readily available, like in the Legends store or elsewhere, as they probably will after a year or two of time being in the game. And then we'll probably see maybe a new set evolving in multiplayer of the new multiplayer cars that are most common all the time. Also, I wanted to mention, a lot of people have been asking me if I will try the new game Racing Masters, which has come out in beta for iOS and Android. Apparently it's supposed to come out for PC too, but I haven't really heard much about that yet. And I would, but unfortunately, for some reason, my phone, the OnePlus 7 Pro, does not support the beta version. Which is weird, because I've been told that Racing Master requires a Snapdragon 845, and that phone has an 855. Maybe it's just a more niche brand, OnePlus. I mean, it's not as popular as something like Apple or Samsung, and so maybe they just haven't unlocked it for more obscure devices yet. I'm not sure what it may be, but that is why I haven't made any videos about that yet. Otherwise, I definitely would have, because it looks quite interesting. The graphics look really good for a mobile game. I mean, just as good as Asphalt 9, if not better. And so I'm definitely looking forward to trying it out whenever the game actually comes out. I'm hoping that that's not a sign that I won't be able to play it on my phone at all. But if that is the case, I am hoping that it does come out for PC like I heard it would, because, I mean, I would rather play it on PC anyway. Also, I did not manage to get the Acura NSX GT3 Evo in its Grand Prix, but I did 2-star the car, so whenever it comes around again, maybe in some kind of car hunt, you know, the kind that they've been doing recently where they give you the key if you're able to max it or packs for it. Maybe I'll pick it up then, but I just decided it wasn't worth trying really hard for, at least like spending tokens on to star it up a lot in its event to have an easier time of getting it, because it's probably not going to be in the Class C Elite event, which is where I would most likely want to use it, but if I can't, then it seems kind of useless, except for multiplayer, of course. A multiplayer would be fine, but even then, I have plenty of good C-Class multiplayer cars. There's just so many of the newer cars that there isn't really that big of a reason to go for, like events where they would allow you to get much better times than before. For example, none of the new S-Class cars that have come out since the Yesco have really been able to compete with it on most tracks, aside from the Tuatara and in a couple cases the Rimac. But cars like the LVN and the Devo and ones like that were super expensive and difficult to get, but like with the Jesko, which just came out in packs for anyone to get, I mean, it's going to get better times than those two other cars anyway, so why bother going for them? And that's one thing that I feel like has been happening a lot recently. There's a lot of these just really expensive cars, even pay-to-win cars that you can't get without spending real money, that there isn't even really a whole lot of reason to go for it in the first place. And so I'm hoping with this update, with cars like the Pagani Imola, for example, that car looks really good. I think it's going to be really good in A-Class most likely. I'm hoping its event is not egregiously difficult, because if it is, then most people just aren't going to bother again. But if its event is challenging, but not like completely frustrating or ridiculous, then I think a lot of people are really going to try to go for it. And I think that's really what Gameloft needs to go for if they want people to go for a lot of the newer cars that they're coming out with. Because the better a car is overall, the more useful it will be in most cases in multiplayer or events, the more people are going to be willing to spend or expend even just time on in the event in order to get. Like the Imola, I can see being one that people are going to be more likely to go for than like the Roma or whatever, because that car is going to be kind of useless because it's in low to mid B class, I think it is. But the Imola being one of probably the new kings of A class, I wouldn't be surprised if, even though the event is difficult, a lot of people really try going for it. Because it kind of feels like a not pay to win GT by Citroën if its event is decent, which I'm definitely banking on, because if it is, that's one car that I'd definitely be willing to spend a lot of tokens on in order to get. It looks really good. But none of the rest of the cars in the new update particularly catch my eye so far. I mean, we've got that weird C-Class car that looks like a Lotus. At least that's what I thought it was at first. It's like ATS or something like that. That thing has 12 nitro at stock. I don't know if that's a typo or if that's real, because if that's real, that's got to be the worst stock nitro by far in the game. And at max, it's not much better, having the lowest nitro efficiency in Class C and one of the worst in the entire game. But it offsets that with a really high 87 acceleration, which is the 4th best in the game and the best in Class C. So cars like that are interesting just because they're not your run-of-the-mill, just middle-of-the-road and all-stats cars that we see a lot of the time. But it's just not going to be a king or really worth going for simply because the rest of its stats are just not good enough for it. Now, cars like these that just are not going to be as good. Cars like the Roma, for example, are going to be picked up a lot of the time by a lot of people if they're in easier events, and I think it's actually a pretty good idea to have the Roma as a reward in the 1v1 multiplayer season, because while that car isn't great, it gives people more of a reason to play that, and especially with the entry fee still being free if you go in at the lowest level, I mean, I'm probably going to try to go for it. I don't know what it would take to get it. Would you only have to get to the top one once, or you have to do it multiple times? Don't know how that would work, but I just think that's a cool new dynamic and a way that we've not been able to get a car before. And it's cool to see the 1v1 season getting more use in the game. Here, this Tech Rules passes us at the very last second, but we still beat 3 Infernos as well as a Fenner. And so this car, while it's obviously not the most amazing, can still hit pretty hard in multiplayer if you know how to drive it. I mean, I was competing pretty well against some of the upper level cars that people had in the current season, which obviously is going to be a little bit easier because not everybody is going around and just maxed Infernos and Fenners and stuff like that, because most people don't have those. So technically, in that season, it should be even better with this car than what I'm racing in here. And now it is time for my general review about the car. I guess I've sort of been giving it already. It's not the king of B class. It is not a king of B class. There are plenty of better cars in Class B, but it should not be underestimated in multiplayer. It flies under the radar a lot of the time. Most people don't really think about it when you talk about B class cars, but it's better than people give it credit for. If you don't believe me, take it out in multiplayer if you have it at least 4 or 5 stars, and you'll be pleasantly surprised with how it performs. I drove this car a few times against the Hot Dog in his stream recently in the current multiplayer season, and it did pretty well against cars like the Icona. As we nearly passed this Tech Rules at the last second, thank you all so much for watching. Please like the video if you have enjoyed, and consider subscribing for more Asphalt and other games content, and I will see you in my next video. Goodbye!